Usually, as far as drums are concerned, some of my favorites are the API 512 preamps. So I usually start with that. As my first choice. I like those for metal and for rock. They're just really extra punchy. And as far as the room mics and things of that nature or whatever, I like a Neve style preamp. So right now what we've got going on is like the Focusrite ISA preamps, which is a Rupert Neve design from the 80s. It's a more of a full frequency design than yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's more of a full frequency design than his older 1073, which I'm a really big fan of. They're more classical sound. The 1073s are more of classic sound, like a little warmer and things of that nature. But I like to, I think, selecting using premium preamps and conversions essential for recording acoustic drums. If you use the cheap stuff like the inexpensive interfaces that you can get at Guitar Center or wherever, they tend to make the drums, they're digital so they sound clean, but they tend to make the drums thin and distant sounding. And just something about the old transformer-based preamps and tube-based preamps, they add harmonic distortions to the signal that makes them bigger and fatter and warmer. Awesome. And it's more like what we're accustomed to hearing, from the inception of audio recording. Through the years they've tried. They started out initially. They wanted, the equipment designers and engineers wanted cleaner tones. And they finally in the 90s we got to into the digital realm with the ADATs and things like that were really clean, but then they realized the sound was really cold and sterile, and so there's been a realization that we need to go back to the classic use the classic preamps and things of that nature or whatever, and better DA converters to get the bigger, warmer sounds that were actually more pleasant to listen to. But yeah, right here, in the studio, we're using the Universal Audio. We're using those for the room mics or whatever. Those are nice, warm-sounding tube preamps. But yeah, like I said, normally for rock and metal, I'm a big fan on the actual shells, the kick, snare, and toms, the APIs. They have a really fast transient response, really punchy-sounding preamp naturally. Like I said, the Rupert Neve stuff is a little slower transient response, but it's a really just full range, just a really nice, warm preamp that's not like overly driven. Like if you use some of the UA or whatever, it's tube based, so you can get a more driven sound, which is really cool for like things like room or bass guitar, things of that nature. But that's usually my personal preferences. Like I said, for rock project or something else, sometimes I'll use the Neve 1073s or whatever, or the Ventec versions of that. For the drum sounds, if I want something that's not quite as punchy and something that doesn't require the fast transients. But yeah, but as far as mic preamps, I think that's usually what I go with, and it's what I recommend. Okay. As far as rock and metal, and they're very, again, I say it again, industry standards. They're usually they're pretty common go-tos for most people in the industry. I will say, I guess we'll talk about it more later or whatever. One thing that I do not do with drums, I usually don't EQ the drums going in. I usually record it just straight flat and with no compression, no EQ. And that's pretty typical these days. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with doing some EQ and compression on the drums or whatever, if you're confident that that's what you want. But like you can bring up, unwanted cymbal bleed and things of that nature. If you go too far with a compression or EQ, I just think it's more safe to go in just clean and natural. Yeah. Just capture the mics and the drums as they are with the preamp, character.
And that's become part of your sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like as far as my voice, as far as engineer or producer, most of my clients, they don't know anything about preamps right. and things like that.
So you make those calls for
them.
Yeah,
I make those calls, and these are usually what yields, helps me get to the sound that they usually want the best anyway. Almost everybody wants a large and big sounding record. I think that's kind of a universal thing. I've never had anybody said, "Yeah, I want my record to sound thin and distant." So using the transformer-based preamps and tube preamps and things like that, they help you get a bigger, more in your face, a hotter. Everybody says warm, but to me, I process it as hot. It's got a heat to it. A real sizzly, a present kind of quality. It kind of jumps out. It jumps out of the speakers at you instead of sitting on a flat plane. I think Steve Abbott said that in one of the Creative Live. Something about the analog stuff, just like the real amps and things, they jump out of the speakers instead of laying back in the background or on the table or something. So. But those are our preamp selections. Pretty simple with the way we went about stuff. We've already gotten some gain structure happening. What I normally do here in the Pro Tools is when I start a project, I have a template that I usually start with, and I can actually share that. We might figure out a way to share that with the viewers. They just basically give some starting EQs, starting compression, starting panning and stuff like that for the drums, for the guitars, for the vocals, everything. But for this particular, like I said, we're going to actually start tracking some drums. We're going to get drum samples first, and that's what I'm going to talk about. This is probably not as applicable to Tommy's record because Tommy wanted more organic, natural drum sound. So we're going to try to use performance take only. But oftentimes with certain styles like metal and more processed, when people want a more processed style sound, and or the drummer just doesn't play consistently or dynamically, using samples is often necessary. So it's always wise, in my opinion, just as a backup, to grab samples of the acoustic kit, and and we'll go over that process also.
Awesome.
But first, like I said, we need to check the gain structures, make sure we've got good, healthy gain structures. I'm not sure how many people out there are actually using Pro Tools, but pretty much all the DAWs are similar in that I think they have like a yellow area. I think red usually means you're clipping out. Green, means it's on the lower side. But usually, rule of thumb for me or whatever, like unlike with analog, like transformer preamps and stuff, if you really push the preamps, you can actually increase the harmonic distortion and increase, a transient,
what's happening sonically.
What's happening sonically, exactly. Yeah, you can manipulate that so it's desirable sometimes to drive the gain pretty hot, or back it off to make the preamp more clean. But then with Pro Tools and with the digital realm, if you turn it up and you drive the digital realm, it's just going to the distortion is different in character. It's more digital jitter. It's a harsh, less pleasant to hear, listen to distortion that happens. So most of the time, what you want to do is just get it in the yellow. That's to make as simple as I can make it. Just get the sound on the level, make sure nothing's peeking out of across the board, and so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to get the preamp set. I'm gonna drive because Tommy, this song is big and pretty bombastic, and we want some punchy drums. So we're going to drive the preamps quite a bit. We've got them set up, but we're going to get the levels going to the computer pretty clean, just in the yellow. But let's see. Let me see if I can get Tommy. Tommy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. But yeah, I'm gonna get Tommy to play this the kick drum real quick.
Okay.
I usually start with the kick drum. I just want to check the gain structures, and I want to make sure I've got I'm not clipping on the preamp itself, and I also want to make sure that I've got a good clean signal going to the Pro Tools. But Tommy, if you can, just give me the kick drum nice and solid.
Okay.
So the kick's coming through the API?
Yeah, so I've got the inside kick is coming through the API, and I believe the outside kick is actually going through the Focusrite, right? I think, yeah. I think that's how we have it wired in. normally in my studio I have more APIs, so I
Yep.
just run the inside and outside.
Through APIs?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like since the API's got a good transit response, I'm going for the, you know, I want definitely the inside mic to be with API. So we've got a good signal to the inside. Let me. Might be actually using the wrong preamp here. Yeah, let me try this other preamp. There we go. So the outside mic's actually going through the universal audio right now. But yeah, it looks like we've got a good gain structure. Nothing's clipping on the preamps. And then you know, we're in the yellow comfortably. And Tommy's hitting pretty hard. Cool, I've got the kick good. Let's get the snares hit dead center, just nice and solid.
Okay.
Cool, I've got the snare.
Okay.
But yeah, just like with the kick, just making sure it's not, you know, we're got a good hot gain structure
Yeah.
on the preamp, but it's not clipping. And then, you know, also we're in the yellow with the snare. It's important to know that a lot of times the drummers, you know, when they're giving their samples, you know, I'll try to tell them, hey, hit it nice and solid.
Yep.
But a lot of times drummers, especially in rock and metal, they actually play harder when they actually start playing.
Right.
So I use,
behind it and-
yeah, they get in the groove and
Yeah.
they're really killing it. So it's important to double check your settings.
So do you leave headroom for that when you, like right now, is there headroom built in there?
Yeah,
or do you
usually
readjust?
just as long as it's in the yellow, and like I said, as they play, if it's like clipping out, or you know, always
watch.
throughout the session, especially as the first couple of tracks, if they're playing really heavily, you want to double check to make sure you're not getting any clipping or whatever. Because oftentimes, like it's not something you'll hear immediately,
Yeah.
especially while the live acoustic instruments are going on. So you definitely want to check that out. Cool. But let's do this again with the tom. Tommy, hit that the tom one mic.
Now what mic is that we're using?
Yeah, this is the Sennheiser 421,
Okay.
and I guess we'll listen to it, but I may need to move the mic up a little bit. But
I can run out there and adjust it too. If you
yeah, if you can push it up
just lift it, same angle.
just push it in closer to the center of the drum, just
Sure.
to have like an inch or two. Yeah, the proximity effect with the drums or whatever, I usually try to make sure that each mic has like an inch bite or inch or two like bite on the drum itself. Perfect. Yeah, go ahead and give me that, Tom. Cool, that looks healthy. Let's do the floor tom. Cool, that looks great. I'm now gonna get you to just kind of jam on the kit because I'm gonna get some overhead and room gain structures.
Okay.
And you can just play whatever. Yeah, it looks like our gain structures are all good. So we spent some time setting this stuff up previously. Tommy's playing nice and solid, and we're not seeing any clipping on the preamps, and we're not seeing any everything's kind of in the yellow here in the Pro Tools, so I think we're in a safe. Awesome work. And it's important to know for you guys out there, Tommy's not a drummer, and he's rocking it.
That's pretty good for not a drummer.
Yeah. Well, he's played drums before, but you know.
He's solid.
Awesome. But yeah, I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to discuss for as far as this. Oh yeah, I'll go over some of the preset stuff in my
Sure.
Pro Tools.
Because that seemed really easy. I mean, just set, like, your mics are in the right spot, you're setting the levels here,
Yeah.
checking into Pro Tools, and then
Getting gain
ready to
structures
go.
are really easy. Like I said, especially if you're a drummer who understands, like, I need to play hard, you know, because a lot of
Yeah.
people, like when they warm up, they play lighter than when they're actually tracking,
Right.
things like that. It's important to know to kind of lecture the drummer on, hey, you need to hit the drums, you know, but Tommy, you know, he's been doing this for years and he knows, you know.
Cool.
But yeah, like I said, I normally start with a preset, you know, kind of a, you know, preset thing, and I'll go into Pro Tools here. And as you'll notice, this is a pretty radical looking EQ here happen, but kind of get it to where I normally start.
So we got a question, Jamie, from Goo Guy 15. Is that reverb on the snare just the sound of the room, or is that a plugin?
Yeah,
So
I've actually,
he's-
yeah, someone mentioned that earlier. I actually do have a reverb here on my my template. And this is just a generic, just starting point. It's the Renaissance verb by, or Renaissance reverberator by Waves. And yeah, I've just kind of got like a medium room, like studio room kind of emulation on the overall drums right now. And I can bypass this and have Tommy play a little bit just so people can hear the difference.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Hey Tommy, go ahead and jam some more. I turned the reverb off or whatever. We got some viewers that want to hear the difference. Perfect. Can you just hit the snare by itself for me? Yeah, hopefully those of you can hear the difference. Like, but the reason I do that, like I said, you know, oftentimes I'll put some extra verb in the mix or whatever, but it just makes it sound cool for the drummer. You know, it's kind of, you know, like, you know, usually, like I've said it before, you know, my vision, you know, the ultimate, you know, recording is the band on their best day.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like the band with the ideal equipment. You know, everybody nails all their takes, and you know, in their usual environment. You know, and I always envision the bands playing big, you know, hall venues or you know, big coliseums and things like that. And it's, you know, I kind of grew up listening to music that had, you know, that you know, Bob Rock was a producer that, you know, made the band sound huge. You know, they were arena rock bands, and he made them sound like they were playing in an arena, and that to me makes a lot of sense. You know, obviously through the alternative era, something, you know, changed as far as the desired drum sounds. Like you know, a lot of the producers want to hear a lot of the actual studio room, and like I said, I don't subscribe to that. I'm not really a big fan of like having the, you know, band sound like they're in a room, unless that's, like I said, unless that's what the client wants. And unless that's, you know, they kind of want that kind of intimate translation of their music to where they want the listener to feel like they're in the room with the band. But a lot of times, like I said, I want the listener to feel like they're at the venue, you know, experiencing the show or whatever. So, you know, I use a bigger room type of reverb on the drums, you know, obviously, and I don't have a large room myself, so I usually emulate. But using this reverb, you know, on the drum, it kind of gives the, you know, the drummer the sensation.
That same feel.
Yeah, he's playing in a big
playing,
room,
yeah.
and the listener also. So, you know, obviously, you know, this reverb, you know, this is actually a template of Tommy's record or whatever, and this is actually, we use this on the record, along with a few other plugins that we didn't have available to us here. But this is you know, this is actually the reverb we used on the record, and it's just a, you know, it's just a 12% mix of you the reverb. It's not a whole lot, but it's enough to give the drums, to make the drum sound larger.
Yeah.
And things. So, but yeah, I'll put that back on for Tommy's inspiration. But
Is that what you call the plug-in?
Yeah, Tommy's inspiration plugin.